Hi. This video will be a bit different from the videos I normally record, as it will not be for a specific version of Flightplan Visualizer. Instead, I chose to record a video of how I use Flightplan Visualizer myself, and perhaps it will give you some inspiration as how you can use the software. The video will be split in 3 parts. First, I will show what I do before I buy scenery. Secondly, I will show what I do before purchasing third-party aircrafts. And in the last part, I'll show how I use the program when I'm planning my flights. At the time I'm recording this video, Aerosoft have this airport at sale. And it's an airport I thought about purchasing for some time. Cologne Airport, or as you say in Danish, Köln, is a major freight airport, and I tend to fly a lot of freight aircraft. So for this reason, it's an airport I had in my view for some time. Here at the Aerosoft website, you can see images of the scenery, you can see video, you can read about it, and from this information, it seems like an airport that I would like to have. But before purchasing the airport, I normally go into Flightplan Visualizer to see how the airport is used. So I hit Control A, and I enter the ICAO code of Köln Airport. EDDK, and press enter. And already I have been flying into and out of this airport. As you can see, I have marked some of the gates as my favorites. And the way I do that is normally I load an aircraft, go into the airport in the flight sim, and then I try to park that aircraft at different gates. At some airports and some gates, you might have airways that are not at the gates. You can have various static elements that will be in the way for the GSX vehicles and so on. And normally I find the gates for different aircrafts that I tend to use. For example, all those with a yellow outline are those I have marked as my favorites. And the way you do it is you right-click the gate and choose Edit Gate Info. You put this check mark that it will be a favorite and it will be marked at yellow, and you can enter a text. And you click OK. Once you have done that, when you hover the mouse over the gate, you will see the comment, which is the text you entered, and it's easy to find the gates you want to use at this airport. The runways tab will tell you information about the runways. This is a default prepared airport, so perhaps these data are old and outdated according to how the airport looks today. But you can see what's there as of now. I then go to the traffic tab sheet, because for me, the airports I like to use are those that feels like a real live airport. And one key element, at least for me, is that it will have traffic. I have, before I started to use Flightplan Visualizer, I have bought airports that looks very nice, but it's airports that will be visited by 3 to 10 planes every day. So the chance there'll be planes taking off, landing when I'm there are slim. And in hindsight, it will be airports I would not buy today. So therefore, we go to the traffic chart. As explained in other videos, what you see here is based on your active search. And right now, you can see that I'm showing traffic for Danish air transport, and they have no flights into Köln. So instead, I use this drop-down, and I choose all flights to and from this airport. And you can see based on the flight plans that come with the Flightplan Visualizer that there is an average, daily average of 225.14 aircraft. As of now, and per default, it will show the full week and show an average per day. But using this drop-down, you can go look for a specific weekday. And then, of course, it will be an integer number. There'll be exactly 240 aircrafts on a Wednesday going into and out of this airport. One thing that's also important is which kind of aircrafts and so on. So I can choose another chart simply by scrolling the mouse. I can cycle through all the charts. Here I can see those 225 aircraft that are flying in and out of Köln every day. I can see which type it is, and I look for aircraft that I own. I have the Aerosoft, the Airbuses. I have the Boeing, the P&D Boeings. I have the Quality Wings 757. And there's many aircraft flying in that I own. So buying this airport, it sees traffic of the aircraft that I use. Also, I like to fly a lot of freight aircraft. And as I said, Köln is having a lot of freight traffic. Almost 15% of the daily traffic is freight. And again, I can scroll and I can see the carrier. For instance, I can use this for the aircraft I have, which repaints do they have, and so on. Here I have it per carrier. Here it should be an operator. Actually, there is a bug in my software I need to address here. It should look similar to this one. And you can see which part of the world the traffic is coming from or going to. Naturally, we are in Europe, so a big majority of the flights are from Europe. Here we have it per region. We can see it per sub-region, per country, state, per airport, if we want to. You can also go to the legs page. For example, if I want to see which aircraft are going into and out of Köln. Right now, they are sorted by the time, but I can simply click here to have it sorted by IATA code or here the name of the aircraft. For example, I can see a lot of 300-600 freight aircraft are going in. I don't have this aircraft. A lot of Airbus 319s, 20s, and actually Aerosoft are probably going to release the 330 in a few weeks, and we can see a lot of traffic for the 330-200 and 300 are going in and out of this airport. We have some ATR. BAs, Boeings, and so on. So you can look for a specific aircraft and see which one they come fly in and out of this airport, and you can see the airline. We have some here, Lufthansa City Line, that is operated for Lufthansa, or PDA, Austrian, and so on. So nothing I have seen here will tell me to not buy this airport, because it's serviced by the aircraft that I own, and there's a lot of traffic going in and out of this airport. Thanks to video editing, I purchased the software, I installed it, and I started the simulator. And as you can see, here we have a 777 FedEx parked at one of the gates at Köln. And as I told, that often I load different aircraft, try to park them at different places to find out where my favorite is. So let's close down the simulator. and return to Flightplan Visualizer. I have Make Runways by Peter Dawson in order to scan all the scenery and to have all the latest information about this airport available for me. So now, when I double-click the airport, you can see that it is, in fact, this Köln airport installed. And when I go to the gates now, you see there is a lot more of freight gates available at this airport. Right now, I loaded up the aircraft at gate E12. And I can now mark this as my favorite. I right-click, choose Edit Gate Info. I write information about the aircraft parked here and mark it as my favorite. And now I can choose to load different aircraft and choose new favorites based on which gates I like. For instance, flying the PMG aircrafts and many of the other third-party, normally I would shut down the simulator in order to choose a different aircraft because it often gives a lot of trouble when you select an aircraft. But in this case, I'm not going to fly the aircraft, so we can see how it goes. I can choose 737. This one will be fine. While it's loading, we can choose to look at the gates that are available for us. For example, I might want to choose D18. So I wait it to fully load. And I navigate. Again, thanks to video editing. We are now fully loaded at the gate, and we can see the aircraft at the gate, and we can see the ground equipment and so on. And for me, it looks like a fine place, so I can go mark this as my favorite. I right-click D18, Edit Gates, write the type of aircraft, mark it as a favorite. And now flying in and out of this airport, I know where I want to park my aircraft. For ATC, I use this program called Pro ATC X. And one of the features it have is it can keep your arriving gates clear of any AI aircraft. So when you arrive at the destination airport, you will know that there is a place for you to park. And that is one reason I mark these gates as my favorite. Some airport designers make very crappy AFCAD files. They make the gates overlap each other, or they make gates that are too small. And when I mark my favorites, I know that this gate is big enough to have a 737-800 parking here. So before I fly a flight, I will find out where I'm going to arrive, in this case D18. And I can go in here and mark that gate as my arriving gate. I will know that it's big enough, and I will know it's available for me when I arrive at the airport. So in relation to buying and using different airports, this is how I use Flightplan Visualizer. At the time as I'm recording this video, you can see from this banner that Aerosoft have just released the new updated CRJ, and we have a Black Friday week sale that used to purchase the Cologne airport. The new updated CRJ, I had it in my sights for some time. A friend of mine recommended it, and I decided to go for it. And having been flying a bit the last few days, it's a really nice aircraft, and I like to get to know it better. But before purchasing an aircraft, a third-party aircraft, I will also use Flightplan Visualizer to search for AI flight plans that utilize this aircraft. And that's because I use Flightplan Visualizer very much to find inspiration of which flights to fly. And for this purpose, I would use the leg search feature. I will start by resetting the form. And I will go, in this case, with an aircraft. I will select none. And I will scroll to the aircraft in question. The CRJ, the new updated CRJ, it will both include the CRJ 700, 900, the 1000, and the 550. However, none of the flight plans I have installed are utilizing the 550. So I will check these three and I will perform a search. The number down here tells me how many flights are utilizing this aircraft. And this value will tell me that how many routes that are serviced. I click Danish word for yes. And I can see all the flights. As you can see, we have a lot in the States. We have a lot in Europe. We have in Indonesia. We have in a few in Australia and Japan and China. And many of these markers contain a star, and that's because I have marked these as my favorites. In this case, I will see purchasing this aircraft, I can find lots of inspiration of flights to fly. Likewise, as I stated before, the new Airbus 330 will probably be released by Aerosoft in a few weeks. And I know there is a lot of flights for that one, but if I did not know it, again, I would use the leg search feature, reset my search, select none. And I would simply choose both the 200 and the 300 of the 330. Because for me, it's not important that one flight is only serviced by one type. That as long as I only got one type of aircraft, I could choose both. But it's up to you to decide what you want. Again, I can perform the search. And as you can see, there's you can find plenty of inspiration of flights to fly in this aircraft also. So again, I will buy this aircraft because I know I can find inspiration here. Recently, the new updated 737 NGXU was released by PMDG. And I wanted to perform some flights in it. And again, I turned to Flightplan Visualizer to find some inspiration for flights to fly. And as no surprise, we return to the leg search. And as in the previous example, I reset, select none. And then I scroll to the aircraft in question. The new one, it has the 800 and the 900. So those are those I select. And even though it's not max versions, I would select those also. If I had the max, I would fly the max. But for me, it's if there is a route serviced by the max and I don't own the max, for me it will be okay to fly it in the normal 800. So I perform the search again. And as no surprise, there is a lot of flights And it would be even more terrible if you search for all of the Airbusses. The map will be filled by flights. So this is too much, and I will reduce the amount of flights that are found by simply adding additional search criteria. For instance, I can choose I will not fly any flights that takes more than 4 hours. And I can choose that either or both airports have to be amongst those I have marked as my favorites. And again, if I perform the search, you can see it's still a lot of flights that are found, but at least now the flights between, for example, USA and Europe have been removed because they are all more than 4 hours. All of the aircraft all of the airports you can see are shown with the star, meaning that it's airports that I have marked as my favorites. Some people will only mark airports they own as their favorite, but I mark airports that have a special meaning for me as a favorite. For example, when Microsoft released FSX back in the days, there was a few airports that they made a little extra work than most of them, so they look better. Those I have marked. I tend to fly a lot of freight aircraft, so many of the airports I have marked as favorite are important cargo hubs where there's a lot of freight aircraft going in and out of them. But if I want to, I can refine my search even further. I can again go to leg search, and I can choose a rank and say that both airports have to be airports I have ranked as third-party quality. And the way I use the software myself, it will mean that it's airports that I have actually bought. So performing this search, I will reduce the number of flights. And now I have only flights between airports that I have purchased. As you can see, I have some in Australia. I have a lot in Europe, and I have some in the States also. And like most flight sim users, I have probably bought too many airports. I have airports that I have not used very much. And when I got the new updated 737, I decided to do a search like I had done here to actually use some of the airports. And for the last week or so, I have been performing a daily flight where I have been flying from one of my purchased airports to another of my purchased airports. And I've got some value for my money because I started to fly into some of the airports I don't use very often. Now you have reduced the search as I have here. You can manually pick a route. You can simply, for example, here in Madrid, I can double-click the airport, go to the legs, and I can see the legs, and I can pick one. For example, if I want to fly this flight, it's inbound, so it means it's inbound from Manchester to Madrid. And if I want to fly this flight, I can double-click it and have some information about it. But instead, I chose to use the randomizer feature that was added in one of the recent versions of Flightplan Visualizer. And what it will do is it will randomize based on those that are part of my active search. So of all those flights, I ask it to pick one. In this case, it's a flight from Stansted to Billund, Stansted, United Kingdom to Billund, Denmark. I can see it's a Ryanair flight. I can see the type of aircraft. I can see the requirement for that aircraft or flight number based on this information at what level. If I like this flight, I can choose it, or I can simply return, close down the window, and ask it to pick another one. And in this case, we have a flight from Nice, France to Gardermoen, Oslo in Norway. And I can see it's a flight that, according to the flight plan, is scheduled to last 2 hours and 50 minutes. And it's actually the same in the program. I do a calculation of the flight time based on the distance. And in this case, it's exactly the same value, but normally it will not be. And in this case, it's Norwegian Air Shuttle. And again, 737-800. And in this case, I say, okay, I want to fly this flight. For this one is something I'm working at in the new version. It's not fully implemented, so forget about that part. But in this case, I can choose to transfer the data into SimBrief. And it will take many of the data and open SimBrief. If you're currently logged into SimBrief, it will show you the page where you enter the information, or otherwise it will launch the credential screen where you have to enter your username and password. Here I have logged into SimBrief. As you can see, it had transferred the airline, the flight number, the departure and arrival airport. The alternate is calculated by SimBrief. The date is simply today's date, but the departure and the departure time is obtained from the flight plan. And the aircraft chosen is from the flight plan. And the registration code also from the flight plan. The scheduled flight time is from the flight plan. And the rest is SimBrief. You can use SimBrief to set the number of passengers, cargo, zero fuel weight, whatever you need. You can change the routing, and once you're happy, you can generate the file ups, and everything will be okay. Here I have a briefing done by Sim, and it tells me a lot of information. And it's a large document with a lot of information. And I tend to put it on another piece of paper manually that I keep beside me when I fly. That piece of paper, I also write all the information I'm instructed by ATC, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is that paper I talked about. And as you can see, I fill out the information, the flight number, the date, time, which aircraft I'm using, the departure, airport and gate, the elevation and the transition altitude of that airport, the destination airport, an alternative. I choose to write down the payload, either number of passengers or simply the zero fuel weights, the block fuel, and so on. Cruise altitude. When I calculate the V speeds, I fill them out here. As I obtain information from ATC, I write down the ATIS, the clearance I get, which taxiway to use, departure, if I have some notes during the flights, ATIS from the airport I arrive at, the approach, what is the expected one way, which procedure, and if I have some additional notes. And when I have landed and I asked to taxi to the gates, I write down information about that. And some of the information I simply choose to get from Flightplan Visualizer. From the sim brief, I know which departure airports and so on. But for example, this flight from Nice to Oslo, I can look the details. And here I can see the elevation of the airport, the transition altitude. As I explained previously, I mark which gates are my favorites. So taking off from Nice in a 737, I can see I have marked gate A14. So that would be the one I write to that piece of paper. Likewise, closing this window and going to Oslo, I can again see the elevation, the transition altitude, and I can look at the gates and see which one I want to use. This is actually a good example of why I mark gates as my favorite. I had previously marked one of the others. I forgot if it was 40 or 42 as my favorite. And actually, there was a static aircraft at the same gate. So the last time I flew from this airport, we had two aircraft parked within each other. So I opted to move to another gate, and that will be the one that I will use in the future for this airport. Also returning to the randomizer form. You see, I have some version here that have to do with Rex Text to Direct, Rex Soft Clouds, and Rex Airports. And I can use the program to pick a random number. And the way I use that is I pick a random number, for example, for Rex Text to Direct. I have set up to pick a random number between 1 and 23, both numbers included. I pick a random number, in this case 8. Then I launch Rex Text to Direct. And I go to themes. And the random number it picked was 8. So as you can see, I simply set up my themes with a number. So I scroll to this one and I hit install. And then this will be my random way to have random textures, not seeing the same types of clouds and skies and so on. And also with Rex Airport HD, if I fly into one of the default non-third-party airports, it will not always be the same kind of buildings I see at all airports. So that's a way for me to randomize things. So beside picking random flights, this is one way you could choose to use the randomizer feature. So all in all, what I have shown in this video is how I use Flightplan Visualizer myself, and perhaps it will give you inspiration or ideas to what you can use. Thanks.